Welcome to Paranomaly, where each episode begins with a story, then we take a look at the facts behind the legend. Tonight's story is as follows. I bought the land in early spring. It was a hell of a deal. That should have concerned me at the time, but it didn't. It was quiet, remote, far enough from anything that you couldn't hear a road unless the wind carried it just right. That was the whole point. Just trees and enough space to build something that felt like it was ours. Construction took longer than expected. It always does. By the time the cabin was finished, winter was already starting to lean in. No snow yet, but the air had that edge to it. Cold that sticks around even after the sun comes up. I decided to stay a few nights before bringing my family up, just to make sure everything worked. Water, heat, the basics. The first day felt amazing. The excitement of our new home, the mini vacation away from work and the kids. Then it started to get dark. New place, new sounds, wood settling, wind moving through the trees, the kind of noises that don't bother you until you realize how isolated you really are. I didn't sleep well, but that didn't feel strange either. Excitement and learning to manage a fire kept me up. The second night was different. I don't remember the dream clearly, just pieces. Dirt, not falling, but pressing down on me, like I was buried, packed in tight on all sides. I could feel it against my face and in my mouth, the weight of it sitting on my chest and increasing in pressure before it settled completely. I woke up with the same pressure still on my lungs. It took me a few seconds to realize I was in the cabin. Dry air, wood walls, and no dirt. Just me. I didn't go back to sleep after that. Morning came slow. Gray light through the windows, the type of sunrise that makes you think the sun had a rough night too. I made coffee, walked the perimeter of the cabin, checked for leaks, animal intruders, anything that may cause worry. Everything was fine. As the sun was being lazy, I decided not to be. I decided to walk. Just to get out for a bit. There wasn't really a trail, but I had a general sense of the land from when I had first looked at it. Slight incline to the north, denser trees past that. I figured I'd loop around, get a feel for the place. It started off easy enough. The ground was soft but stable, leaves damp underfoot. Different smell from the first day I saw the property. Then it was warm air, flowers, the scent of trees carried on the breeze. Now it's wet earth, damp wood, the scent of trees on the breeze replaced with a storm on the wind. I kept walking longer than I meant to. I didn't notice at first. There's a point when you're out there long enough where distance stops feeling like distance. Everything looks the same. Same trees, same ground, same quiet. I should have turned back earlier. Instead, I kept going. That's when the trees started to thin out, and the ground changed. The leaves thinned first, then disappeared. Just bare soil. Dark, soft, loose. I slowed down without really thinking about it. Something about it didn't sit right. The air shifted, heavier. The damp earth was still there, but it felt older somehow. It had been sitting untouched for too long. No freshness to it, no movement. Just still. That's when I noticed what was left of the trees on the far side of the clearing. They stood in a rough circle, but they weren't right. The bark had peeled away in long strips, hanging loose. The wood underneath was gray and dry in places, blackened in others like it had started to rot. No leaves. No branches worth calling branches. Just trunks. Dead only on the sides facing the clearing, toward the center. I stepped into the clearing, wanting to move on from this patch of the property quickly. The ground gave slightly under my weight. Not enough to sink, just enough to feel like it wasn't solid all the way through. The smell changed again. Still earth, still damp. But now there was old rot under it, something dead, but long since fresh. Just the memory of meat left on the stale air. I stopped when I saw the mound. It sat in the center of the clearing, uneven, maybe waist-high at most. Stones had been pressed into it, carefully placed. There was wood, too, old planks, splintered, darkened with moisture, not arranged, not structured, just there. Broken and pushed into the dirt. The ground around it was bare, perfectly bare. No grass, no growth, not even weeds. Just a clean radius where nothing had taken root. I took a few steps closer. The area was pressing in slightly from all sides. I crouched down without thinking, brushing my hand against the soil near the base. It was damp, and ice cold. I pulled my hand back and wiped it against my jeans. I stood there longer than I should have, looking at it, trying to make sense of something that didn't need to make sense. The trees around the clearing didn't move. No wind, no sound, just that smell. Earth, damp, and something underneath. I don't know why I picked it up. Not really curiosity. My land, my clearing, just a stone. The stone I chose wasn't any different from the others, at least not at first. I turned it over in my hand. It wasn't rough, that's what caught me off guard. It should have been jagged, uneven, something you'd expect to find in the ground. Instead, it was smooth, not perfectly shaped, but worn in a way that didn't feel natural. Like it had been handled, worked over, polished. Not recently, a long time ago. I looked at the others more closely after that. They were all the same. Different sizes, different shapes, but every edge had been worn down, every surface smoothed out. I didn't know how long I stood there holding it. Long enough that I stopped noticing the weight in the air. Long enough that it felt normal. That's probably why I didn't think twice about taking it. I slipped it into my pocket, stood up, and took a step back from the mound. The change was immediate. Subtle, but immediate. Enough that I noticed. The air felt lighter, easier, like something had stepped back just enough to let everything else move. I took another step, then another. The smell faded as I moved away, not gone, but weaker. The damp earth returning to something more familiar, something that didn't sit so heavy in the back of my throat. By the time I reached the edge of the clearing, I could hear the woods again. Wind through the branches, leaves shifting, something small moving somewhere off to my right. Normal sounds. I didn't look back. I don't know if that would have made a difference. The walk back felt shorter, or maybe I just didn't pay attention the same way. The cabin came into view through the trees, exactly where it should have been. Nothing out of place, no sign that anything had changed. I stepped inside, shut the door behind me, and locked it without thinking. The stone stayed in my pocket. I could feel it there while I moved around, while I made dinner, checked the stove, the windows, the same things I'd already checked twice that morning. It didn't feel heavy, just cold. I took it out eventually and set it on the table. It made a dull sound when it hit the wood, solid, dense. I turned it once in my fingers, then left it where it was. Dinner was simple, nothing worth remembering. I cleaned up, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Sleep came fast. I was back in the clearing, standing at the edge of it. The trees were the same, dead, stripped, facing inward, but the mound was wrong. It wasn't a mound anymore. The surface had been broken open, dirt pushed aside, not neatly or carefully, torn, displaced like something had forced its way out. The stones, they weren't where they'd been. The planks were now broken and scattered everywhere. I stepped forward. I didn't want to, but I did. The smell hit me before I got close. Not damp earth, not anymore. This was different. Rot, but deep. Thick, as if the smell of death was caught in fog and settled into your mouth. It burned the back of my throat. I covered my mouth and kept moving. The mound wasn't a mound anymore. It was a hole. Something had been inside. I stopped at the edge. I didn't want to look, but I did. The soil inside was packed tight along the sides, darker than the surface, impressed in places like it had been holding weight for a long time. And at the bottom was nothing. Empty. I remember feeling relief for a second. Just a second. Because then I saw the tracks. Not leading away from the mound. Leading toward me. Heavy impressions in the dirt. Deep. Wide. Each one spaced farther apart than they should have been. Like whatever made them didn't move the way anything else out here did. I followed them without thinking. Across the clearing. Past the dead trees. And into the woods. And then I saw it. Not clearly. Not all of it. Enough. Between the trees, something tall. Standing where the not really a trail should have been. Facing my cabin. Lights off. Door closed. Still. the thing between the trees didn't move. I could feel it watching, not searching, not wondering, knowing. Then the world shifted, just slightly, and suddenly I was standing in front of the door, just as it splintered inward. The sound snapped me awake. I was in my bed. Dark room, dry air, and the sound. From the front of the house, wood tearing, something forcing its way in. I was out of the bed before I realized I'd moved. Bare feet and cold wood. The sound, too loud in the dark. My chest hadn't caught up yet. That tight, shallow pool of air still stuck somewhere behind my ribs. The noise came again. Deliberate. I didn't think about grabbing anything, didn't think about the door or the windows or the fact that I was alone out here. I just moved. Down the stairs, one hand sliding along the wall, hoping to find a light switch. The dark felt thicker than it should have. It had weight to it. I could feel it move around me. Cold smoke and stagnant air. The smell hit halfway down. Sharp. Fresh. Rot that hadn't had time to settle yet. It burned when I breathed in. The bottom step creaked under my weight, and I saw the door, or what was left of it. The frame was split inward, wood bowed and cracked like it had been pulled apart, not broken. The door itself hung crooked, one hinge twisted, the other barely holding. The latch wasn't shattered, it had been torn free, pulled through the wood like the wood didn't matter. Cold air pushed into the room through the opening, but it didn't move the smell. That stayed. Something stood just outside of the doorway. At first I thought it was just a shadow, too tall to be a person, and the shape changed. The top of it pressed against the broken frame, shoulders angled enough to fit through, but there was no sense that it should fit. The doorway didn't contain it. It bent around it, like the space had given way. It stepped inside. The floor answered it, a dull, heavy sound, heavy boots on timber. The smell thickened. The air shifted. Colder. I couldn't move. It was so large. Too large. Not just tall, wide. The shape of it strained against itself. Shoulders too broad for the frame that held them. Arms thick and long, hanging lower than they should have. The skin, if it was skin, was dark. Not a color I could name. The pale, sickly blue of a body drowned in icy water. It was pulled tight in some places, stretched thin over bone, and loose in others like it had shifted out of place and never settled back. There was dirt pressed into it, packed into the seams where it had split, caught in the folds where it hung, the same soil from the clearing, clinging. Its chest rose, slow, then fell. The sound that came with it wasn't breathing. Its head turned, not searching. It already knew where I was. The eyes caught what little light there was. They didn't reflect it, they held it. Dull at first, then brighter. Not glowing like a light, burning, unblinking. There was nothing empty in them. It was looking at me, like I was the only thing in the room. I tried to step back. My foot didn't move. The air pressed in harder. The thing took another step. The floor dipped under it, not visibly, but I felt it. Through my feet, through the boards, like the weight of it wasn't resting on the surface, but pushing down into everything beneath it. It stopped a few feet from me, close enough that the smell overwhelmed everything else. I couldn't breathe anymore. Bile rose into my throat. If I could move even a muscle, I don't know if I would scream or vomit. It lifted one arm. In the other was the stone. The hand was thick, fingers swollen, joints stiff like they had to force themselves to bend. Dirt broke loose as it moved, falling in small clumps to the floor. It reached towards me. Its mouth opened. The sound came before the words. A wet shift, something loosening. Then it spoke. The voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried. Deep. Rough. It had been dragged up from somewhere that living things didn't belong. I didn't understand them, but I knew they were words. Old, dark words. Dirt fell from its mouth with each one, small pieces dropping from between its teeth. It spoke again, slower, closer this time. The sound pressed into me, not through my ears, through my chest. The hand closed around my throat. I didn't feel fingers. I felt ice, pressure, pain, fear, immediate, complete terror. It lifted me without effort. The room dropped away. The thing held me there, certain, decided. Its face was close now, close enough that I could see the way the skin pulled when it moved, the way the dirt shifted in it, the way the eyes didn't change at all, still burning. My vision started to narrow, edges first, then center. The room pulled back. The thing didn't. That stayed. Clear. What you just heard isn't just a story. In Norse tradition, something like that has a name, the Draugr. It isn't a ghost, it isn't something you see out of the corner of your eye and question later. A Draugr is physical. It's a body that gets back up. The earliest descriptions come from Icelandic sagas where the dead weren't always gone. Some of them stayed, not as spirits, but as something still anchored to their flesh in this world. Most accounts describe the same kind of person returning. Someone greedy, possessive, violent, the kind of person who couldn't let go of what they had in life. Death didn't change that. It just removed the part of them that made them human, and when they rose, they were changed. Descriptions are semi-consistent across sources: skin turning dark, death blue, other times pale, swollen, bloated, larger than they were in life, and the smell. That's mentioned often. A heavy, rotting stench that comes before anything is seen. Something that drifts from the burial mound, warning you before you ever lay eyes on it. Some Draugr stay where they're buried. They guard their graves, protect whatever was laid to rest with them, treasure, possessions, sometimes nothing at all, just the land. It doesn't seem to matter. The attachment is enough. But others don't stay put. They leave. They move through farms, they kill livestock, they break into homes. Some accounts describe them driving entire herds mad, or crushing animals in their stalls. And they don't just kill. What makes them dangerous isn't just murder. It's what they're capable of beyond that. Draugr are described as having unnatural strength, strong enough to overpower grown men, even those known for their size and skill. In many cases, weapons don't do anything. Blades can cut them, but not stop them. Some accounts go further. Their bodies can shift, grow heavier and larger, sometimes taking on forms of animals, seals and bulls, and creatures tied to the land or sea around them. Others don't move around obstacles at all. They pass through them, sinking into the ground, moving through stone and wood as if it were water. And it isn't just physical. There are descriptions of them entering dreams, pressing into the minds of the living, cursing them, spreading illness. In some stories, entire communities suffer after a single Draugr appears, so stopping one isn't simple. In most accounts, it takes a second death, decapitation, burning the body, then scattering the ashes in the sea, in some traditions, remote ground far from where they were buried. Even then, people weren't confident. Precautions were taken before anything ever rose. Iron placed on the body, toes tied together, barriers meant to confuse it, slow it down, keep it from finding its way back. And still, it happened. These accounts weren't isolated. They appear across multiple sagas. Different names, different places, but the same thing described again and again. A body doesn't stay dead. A presence tied to greed, to anger, to attachment. Modern interpretations sometimes soften it, turn it into something closer to a ghost, but the older descriptions are consistent. This wasn't something unseen. It was something you could touch. And if those accounts are to be believed, the worst part isn't that they existed. It's that they still do.